Chapter 3. Everett rubbed his face as he leaned against the door. The third contender for hire to track down David had just left. He had basically regurgitated everything that Everett had handed him in the file. It was like the guy had barely read the material and followed up on none of it. Contenders 1 and 2 had not come up with much new, which Everett found disappointing. Contender 5 had already called in, saying they could not do the work. He knew that he had not given them much time, but this was their job, to find people that generally didn't want to be found. Surely they were better at it than this. Looking at his watch, Everett found contender 4 was running late. Grimacing, he decided he could not wait much longer. Everett got changed, grabbed his keys, and headed to the elevator. Pressing the button, he was pleased to see the elevator headed to his floor. The doors opened, and Bree Henson was there. "Oh, hi! I know I'm late, but I think you will think it was worth it." "I don't like it when people I hire are late," Everett said tersely as he entered the elevator, hitting the button for the garage. "I can understand that. Technically, you haven't hired me yet," Bree responded as she juggled a coffee in a thick folder. "However, again, I think you'll believe it was worth it." "Not likely." Everett didn't have much confidence after the other 3 men who actually looked capable of doing the job had not found enough new information to make him believe they could track down David. Maybe he had been asking too much of them. Perhaps he needed to broaden his search for a reputable company outside of the city. "Would you just listen a moment?" Bree followed him out of the elevator. "I'm telling you, I have a lead, a solid lead." "You do?" Everett frowned as he unlocked his rental car. "Really?" "Is there a reason you would think that I wouldn't have a lead?" Bree frowned right back at him, annoyed that he had discounted her. "Get in the car." Everett opened his door, getting in. Quickly, Bree got into the car, doing up her seatbelt. "I have a list of possible people who might harbor your uncle. I also have an analysis of David's tendencies so that we will be more likely to predict his moves." "You said you had a solid lead." Everett wasn't impressed by what she had told him so far. He pulled out of the parking garage. "I'm getting to that." Bree sipped her coffee. She needed the caffeine. She had been up the entire night. "Where are we going?" "Out of the city," Everett said shortly. He would send her back with the car or get her a cab. "I'm late for an important event." "You should slow down before you get a ticket," advised Bree. She shuffled through her paperwork. "I believe that this man, a lawyer named Dan Craymarn, is most likely to have an idea where David is. He worked for David and Robert for years. If I'm correct, he's known about the money laundering the whole time and advised them on how best to hide it." "Those are pretty heavy charges." Everett wasn't amused. "Craymarn is Dad's lawyer." "Why?" "He's a finance lawyer, not a trial lawyer," Bree informed him. "What is he doing being your dad's attorney?" "The only thing I can think of is that David is influencing your father through Craymarn." Everett turned this new information over in his head. He had not thought to question what sort of lawyer Craymarn was. The idea that Craymarn might be influencing his father's choice of plea, or information that he chose to bargain with, just didn't sit well with him. "It's just a theory," Bree inserted into the silence. "It's a good theory." Everett hated to admit it. They had blindly trusted Craymarn. The fact didn't sit well with him. He would talk to Jake and Dylan about Craymarn, see if they had any further insight into the matter. He had to admit, just by that bit of information, Bree had outdone the other bounty hunters he considered hiring. That didn't mean he was going to hire her, no matter how impressive her record was. "I think we should start with Craymarn," Bree told him. "He's the most prominent on the list of people who have potential to harbor David. If he doesn't know David's exact location, he might still be in contact with him." "And if Craymarn doesn't work out?" Everett wanted to know what other thoughts she had for trying to find David. "David had numerous affairs." Bree grabbed an envelope out of her file. "He could have hunkered down with any of the women he'd been with over the years. My hunch would be one of the ones he married or his last mistress, whom he's been with the longest."
"Excuse me?"
Everett was certain he had not heard Bree correctly. He had been surprised as anyone when they had found out that they had new cousins in Andrew and Molson Colburn, 2 sons that had been born to David out of wedlock.
"Did you say married? Multiple times?"
"He is a polygamist," confirmed Bree. "We found at least 4 marriage certificates. He had multiple girlfriends that we can tell. 1 longtime mistress, plus numerous children. David got around."
"How many kids?"
Everett wanted to know. Let me count." Bree started on the birth certificates. 8.
8 kids.
Everett wondered if any of his cousins knew. "The youngest is now 14, Bree commented.
14. That would mean David was—"
Everett trailed off as he did the math.
73!
"The wonders of Viagra," Bree remarked dryly.
"That is just gross."
He was slightly disgusted.
8 kids?
8 kids, plus the 3 that he says are legitimate. Bree made a face. "That's 11.
"What do you mean that he says are legitimate?"
Everett made the turn down a long, winding stretch of road with large houses. "It's doubtful that they are." Bree looked through the marriage certificates. "Since he married a minimum of 4 women, only the first marriage is considered legitimate. There could be more women that we don't know about. Not only that, but at least 1 marriage certificate was dated before his marriage to his acknowledged wife, Rachel. If we can verify its authenticity, then his marriage to Rachel is void."
"This is a mess."
Everett understated it. It was a complete disaster, in his opinion. How could his uncle do this? To his family, his wife? Robert had always impressed upon him to be faithful. Had his father known about David's affairs? Had he covered for him this whole time? His dad had a lot to answer for. Everett pulled up on the side of the road as the driveway was crowded with vehicles. Turning off the engine, he faced Bree.
"How did you find all the stuff out?"
"Simple digging," frowned Bree, shutting the folder. "My assistant Marty is a whiz on the computer. Plus, I have some connections. After that, it was chasing down the information further. Persistence and a knack for knowing what is important is key. Are you going to let us take the case?"
Everett hesitated. "Look, I have no doubt you're good at digging up information. You've proven that. However, what happens when we get close? Can you take anyone down? David's bound to have security, and they won't have any scruples about hurting you."
"You mean because I'm small and I'm a woman?" Bree said dryly.
"Yes."
Everett decided to be blunt about it.
"Exactly that."
"I run the Boston Marathon each year," Bree enlightened him. "I go to the gym, not just for cardio, for strength training. I train with other people who do apprehension so that I know the latest techniques and equipment for taking down criminals with the least chance of getting hurt. I know what I'm doing." Everett still didn't like it. She seemed far too small to be going up against bad guys. She was the type of woman who invoked feelings of protectiveness, not of a physical respect or fear.
"I don't think so. This is a rental car. You can take it back to my condo. I'll catch a ride with one of my brothers."
He got out of the car, leaving the keys in the ignition. Bree quickly pulled the keys and followed him. "I talked to Kepler." That stopped Everett in his tracks. He turned to look at her in surprise.
"About what?"
"Hire me, and I will tell you." Bree waited, holding her breath.
"I don't like ultimatums,"
Everett informed her. "Hire me and give me 1 week to prove that I can do the job," bargained Bree. "If you don't believe I can manage after the week is up, then fire me."
"What did Kepler say?"
asked Everett. Bree shook her head. "Not until after you hire me." Everett dragged his gaze away from her, contemplating the house as he made up his mind. This wasn't how he liked to do business, but he could admire her tenacity.
1 week. I'm coming in with you every step of the way. I want to know every detail of information. I want to go where you go. I want to know exactly what is happening at all times."
"Excuse me? I work alone," protested Bree before she added an amendment. Except for Marty.
Now you work with me or no deal, decided Everett.
It was unconventional. She didn't like it. I don't like ultimatums.
That makes two of us.
Everett liked that she tossed the words back at him. She had spunk. Fine, Bree snapped out. She needed the money, she reminded herself. That office furniture wasn't going to pay for itself.
What did Kepler say? Questioned Everett.
He confided that he talked to you earlier yesterday, Bree apprised him, that you wanted to try to trade David for a reduced sentence for your dad.
Everett grimaced. She really had talked to Kepler. Are you two friends?
Something like that. Bree had the suspicion that she was probably as close to a friend as Kepler got. I convinced him that it might be in his best interest to repeat your offer to his boss.
You what?
Everett stalked back to Bree, intent on her answer.
You got him to see if it's possible?
He is giving his superior the choice. If Kepler gets the go-ahead, we need to find David and turn him over to the FBI, stated Bree. She stood her ground, not intimidated by Everett in the least. Everett was amazed. Kepler had not wanted to listen to him for even a moment. Yet Bree had somehow managed to get the man to consider doing exactly what Everett was hoping for.
Leave the file in the car.
Pardon? Frowned Bree, wondering at the sudden turn in conversation.
I'm going to introduce you to my brothers and some cousins. You can gather first impressions from them, Everett told her. However, no talking about the case today. This is a celebration of Michael's return from prison. I don't want any talk about David to mar the day.
Bree put the file in the car, stuffing the keys into her pocket after locking it. Are you sure about this? If you introduce me as a bounty hunter, they're bound to be suspicious.
Then I won't say what you do for a living, responded Everett.
What if they ask? Bree hurried up to keep up to his stride as he opened the front door. She was glad she had decided on a comfortable pair of jeans, sandals, and blouse. At least she looked presentable for an occasion like meeting family. Or if they ask how we met?
Make something up.
Everett pulled the door closed behind them.
It must be outside already.
I work in data analysis. That's true and believable. Bree looked around the house. It was beautiful. She thought about her own small apartment. The two did not compare.
I've run the Boston Marathon, Everett said suddenly.
You've run the marathon? I've never seen you there, frowned Bree. Not that she would have seen him, considering the number of entries each year.
It was years ago,
replied Everett.
I have been in Europe working for the family business since then.
Well, I suppose we could have met at the marathon originally, concluded Bree. Maybe they had and didn't even remember the incident. It could be the truth. I guess you ran into me a couple of days ago. That is sort of true. Everett moved forward to the open patio doors. There was numerous people chatting in groups on the sandy beach. Everett pointed them out to Bree.
That is Anne and Michael. He's the one just out of prison after being falsely accused of David's crimes. Noah and Elle are right there, Max and Paget. Those three are brothers. Detective Andrew Colburn and Bethany Searson. Andrew and his brother Molson helped with proving Michael's innocence. They're also David's sons, but you already knew that. My brother Jake is right there with Sterling. They're dating. That is Dylan and his wife Kelly. He's my younger brother. Rachel Ramsley, David's wife, is over there talking to that woman. I don't know her name. We've not been introduced. I would assume she came with Molson. That other lady is Fenley, the housekeeper, and her nephew.
There are a lot of children. Bree tried to count them and gave up as they ran across the sand.
14, Everett told her.
He stopped talking as Anne's voice drifted up to them. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. Anne smiled tremulously. We've been very grateful to everyone in this room for supporting us, for being determined to find the proof of the truth, for giving us some time of privacy after Michael's release. You're all very dear to our hearts, and that's why we've asked you to come to celebrate today with us. There was some applause before she continued. We especially want to thank people that we had not truly considered family until this hardship. That was wrong of us, and we fully wish to call you a part of our family. Drew Colburn for his help with convincing the FBI to investigate Agent Law's activities, and Molson Colburn for finding proof of Michael's innocence and bringing it forward so that justice could be served. We have a plaque on our wall where part of the quote says, "A brother is born for adversity." Michael and I went through a very difficult, adverse time. Drew and Molson, you are brothers to us. Anne tucked herself against Michael's side. Amy has been helping Michael to practice all week, so please be patient. Michael cleared his throat. He opened his mouth to speak, then shook his head ruefully. Anne whispered something to him, and he tried again. Thank you. Everyone clapped, and Fen Lee declared dinner ready as she wiped her eyes. People took their places at the long table that had been set out on the sand at the beach for the outdoor gathering. Michael had an operation. He isn't usually able to speak very much, nor say what he wants to say. Words get substituted or mixed up, Everett explained to Bree. They watched as the family sat down together, talking while getting ready to share a meal. Michael is out of prison. No, grimaced Everett. It is not ended. It won't be over until David Ramsley's found and admits that he coerced my father into this mess. He isn't going to be very easy to find, she told him. He's hidden accounts with lots of money in them. He has criminal connections, as well as a lot of powerful friends who might be willing to help or hide him. That doesn't matter, Everett looked at her. I'll pay whatever is necessary. Good, she gave him a mercenary smile, because my services don't come cheap. Shall we? Everett pointed toward the group. They haven't seen us, Bree made a suggestion. We could search through Michael's study and see if there's any information that we need to track down David. David framed Michael, scowled Everett. If Michael knew where his father was, he would have given him up. Anne most certainly would have. She has zero love for her father-in-law. I'm not saying they wouldn't have said something, Bree explained patiently. Sometimes people don't think they know where someone is, but they have a crucial piece of information that will lead to the person. I just want to double check. No, I'm not going to get caught snooping through Michael's study, decided Everett. Who said anything about getting caught? Bree raised an eyebrow. Everyone is busy out there on the sand. It won't take 20 minutes. We can talk to Anne on another day. I'm sure she'll be more than cooperative, he said, raising a hand to wave as someone below spotted them. Bree gave him a sideways glance, but dutifully followed him down the steps to the sand. It really was a lovely spot. A beautiful house on a nice stretch of private beach on the ocean. There was even a marina a little ways away. Not someplace Bree would want to live. She would miss the hustle and bustle of city life, but someplace nice to visit or vacation. Bree endured introductions. She didn't like that these people, whom she would probably have to interview later, were thinking that she was dating Everett. Their story about meeting up at the marathon was flimsy at best, yet everyone seemed happy to believe it. Perhaps it was the mood of the day. It seemed a happy, carefree group. An extra chair was brought out, and everyone made room. Bree was looking forward to the food. She had skipped breakfast this morning, and the 3 in the morning Chinese leftovers she had scarfed down were not cutting it any more. This lunch was more than welcome to her hungry stomach. Have you and Everett known each other long? The woman beside Bree probed. Not very long, smiled Bree. She remembered this was Dylan's wife. Thinking a moment, the name came to her. Kelly. He invited me out for the day, and when he remembered he had plans, he was kind enough to let me tag along. That's nice, responded Kelly. I thought someone said you were a data analyst. What is that like? It's more exciting than it sounds. Bree thought that Kelly might actually be shorter than her. It was a refreshing change. She immediately warmed to the petite woman. I look through data for patterns and important information that will be relevant to a case. Like a law case? Asked Kelly. Bree noticed Kelly and her husband were holding hands under the table, using their other hands to eat. It was a sweet gesture. More like criminal investigations. That's interesting. I'm a nurse, commented Kelly. My mom is a nurse, noted Bree. It's a hard but rewarding career. I think she would have preferred I followed in her footsteps, but it wasn't for me. They chatted for a while longer, until Bree noticed Sterling looking at her oddly. Bree had to admit that the other woman looked familiar. Then it dawned on her. Sterling Denver, the tabloid reporter who had done a piece on an itty-bitty bounty hunter who caught Renault, the international fugitive. The article had been condescending and depicted her as some sort of joke, commenting on her size, sex, and stature. It had enraged Bree for days. Yes, capturing Renault had been a total fluke. Not that the papers had needed to portray her that way. Bree watched as recognition flickered over Sterling's face. She put a hand on Jake's arm, whispering in his ear. Great. So much for Everett's brilliant plan not to tell anyone today. Bree put a hand on Everett's arm, gaining his attention. Sterling knows. She's telling your brother right now who I am. How? Everett whispered back, frowning. She did an article on my capture of Renault, Bree said dryly. She just recognized me. The brothers' eyes met, and Everett set down his fork. I had better go talk to Jake. Want me to come with? Offered Bree. No, I've got this. He stood up. Jake followed suit, and the two men went for a stroll down the beach, talking. Bree, Sterling said from across the table, a false smile on her face. Why don't you join me in the little girl's room? Why not? Bree smiled in return as she got to her feet. She ignored curious looks as she followed Sterling up the stairs and into the house. Bree waited for Sterling to speak first as they entered the luxurious spa washroom. Aubrey Henson, bounty hunter. Sterling identified her. Does Everett know who you are? I'm just giving you a heads up because Jake is talking to him about you right now. Bree leaned confidently against the counter, folding her arms. That's great. I imagine Everett is telling Jake that he hired me to find their Uncle David. Sterling eyed her, debating if she was bluffing. I'm just wondering why you're introduced as a data analyst rather than your real occupation. Do you think that would be appropriate? Bree raised an eyebrow. Hey, everyone, I brought the bounty hunter to lunch. The one who's going to hunt down your dad? I don't think Everett would be well thought of for announcing that. Why are you here? Asked Sterling. To get the lay of the land, Bree told her. She decided to go on the offensive. Why is New York's most notorious tabloid reporter here? It's no secret the Ramsleys have been your main focus. I'm Jake's girlfriend. I've also retired from writing for tabloids, Sterling informed her. I've decided on a new career path. Bree thought that was pretty convenient. She chose to keep the observation to herself. Checking her hair in the mirror, she rued the fact that she had not put on makeup this morning. What are the Ramsleys like? Sterling joined her in the mirror. Stubborn, annoying, aggravating, and worth every moment. They have a bad habit of expecting things to work out exactly as they want, since they have the money to throw at every problem to make it disappear. Not this problem, noted Bree. Robert is still going to go to prison. It's just a matter of determining how extensive his sentence is going to be. There will always be a black mark on the family name now. I suppose you are right. Sterling gave her an assessing look. You really think that you can find David? Bree had a predatory smile. It's just a matter of time. I hired her, Everett told Jake out on the beach as they stopped far enough away from the table that no one would be able to overhear them. I know exactly who she is. She has a 92% capture rate. That tiny woman is a bounty hunter? Jake shook his head, nonplussed by the idea. When Sterling told me, I couldn't believe it. I wasn't all that convinced either, admitted Everett. However, in 24 hours, she's come up with information I had no idea about. We'll see if she's practical in the field. I have given her a week to prove herself. A week to catch David? Jake raised an eyebrow. That is a tall order. A week to make significant progress, clarified Everett. Did you know Uncle David was having affairs? Jake motioned back to the luncheon. We knew that. Molson and Drew are right over there. They didn't appear out of nowhere.
No, I meant he has more than just them, explained Everett. David has more kids. He's also married to 3 women besides Aunt Rachel. He's a bigamist? Jake was shocked. I think the term might be polygamist, ventured Everett. I'm not really sure. Is there proof? Jake lowered his voice. Bree found marriage certificates. She has a file an inch thick on David already. Everett ran a hand through his hair in frustration. The man has been leading secret lives. That's crazy, stated Jake. I have enough trouble keeping up with Sterling. I couldn't imagine trying to keep multiple relationships straight. Think of the birthdays, anniversaries, special events. Who to spend the holidays with? That's a nightmare. Everett decided to redirect the conversation. How well do we know Dan Craymarn? He's been Dad's lawyer for years, frowned Jake at the turn in conversation. What about him? He's David's lawyer as well. A grim Everett apprised Jake. That is a big conflict of interest in my opinion, especially since he's telling me to let him know where David is so that we can use that as leverage against the prosecution in Dad's defense. Is he even allowed to do that if he's David's lawyer? Wondered Jake. I don't think so. It would be against his interests as David's lawyer. He's also our primary target for finding out where David is, noted Everett. I also want to know why Dad only has Craymarn representing him. Why wouldn't he have a team of lawyers? Craymarn is a financial lawyer, not a trial lawyer. I thought it was because Dad trusted him. Jake acknowledged the oddity. I never questioned it. You're right. He should have a legal team. Bree thinks that David is trying to influence Dad through Craymarn. Everett looked out over the waves. It was such a beautiful day, marred by the cloud of Robert's imprisonment. Jake digested his brother's words. Do you think that this is true? I don't know, but it bears further investigation. Everett was serious. If you could talk to Dad without Craymarn present, you might be able to find out what's really going on. I will do that. Jake didn't like the thought of anyone manipulating their father. He would get to the bottom of things. Should we tell Dylan? No, decided Everett. I think it's best if we temper what information we give to Dill. He's been through a lot, and being investigated right now by the FBI is stressful enough for him. Agreed, nodded Jake. Dylan had had a disastrous first marriage. The brothers knew that while Dylan was fully capable in his role at Ramsley Insurance, he was going through therapy with Kelly to face his past. He seemed happier than he had been in years, and neither Jake nor Everett wanted to disturb him. Everett didn't like to use the word fragile when it came to his younger brother, but Dylan seemed to feel things internally more than his brothers. They had been protecting him for years. You take care of Dad's lawyer representation, said Everett. I will take care of hunting down our uncle. The FBI may be willing to work with us if we can find David first. How are you going to pay for all this? Asked Jake. My accounts aren't frozen, Everett enlightened him. The FBI took my computer and drives, but my money is untouched until further notice. I guess they think because I was in Europe I wasn't involved. Lucky you, Jake had a wry smile. I'm not used to living on a budget. I suspect it's going to be a bit of a shock. If you or Dylan need anything, let me know, offered Everett. We will. I guess we should go back. Jake looked back at the group and frowned. I wonder what Sterling got up to. Probably grilling Bree. Everett noticed the 2 women coming back from the house. Your girlfriend isn't always subtle. True, smiled Jake. I like her anyways. We suit each other. Everett suppressed an annoyed sigh. Ever since Jake had fallen under Sterling's spell, he was a little different. Less driven and happier. The happier part wasn't a bad thing. The less driven might be. Looking at the group as a whole, the men seemed settled. They were settled into happy domesticity with their wives and girlfriends. Everett wasn't sure he would ever be ready to settle down. He enjoyed leading an exciting life. There was an energy about him that Everett didn't think would translate well into family life. He enjoyed excitement and doing things. Another reason he really didn't want to take over the western half of Ramsley Insurance. Europe had seemed an impossible challenge that he worked hard to get a toehold into. The truth was, it had been impossible.
There was no chance for Ramsley Insurance to make any headway in that market. It was past time they pulled the plug on that endeavor. Come back and work for Jake? Everett didn't want to think about getting stuck in more boardrooms, heading up boring meetings, and dealing with mundane paperwork. He had done it enough in Europe. Perhaps it was selfish of him. They had all been drilled at an early age that they were going to become part of the family business, part of the Ramsley empire. They were going to do insurance because their dad did insurance. It was expected. Everett didn't want to anymore. Surely it would be better for all involved if they hired someone to do the job that actually wanted it. He would stay for the interim until Jake had things stabilized with the company finances. Afterward, he would be free to figure out what he wanted to do. Automatically, his eyes were drawn to Bree, who was laughing over something Max had said. Everett would bet that Bree led an exciting life. Jake and Everett headed back to the table. Once seated, Drew Colburn caught Everett's eye. He deliberately nodded his head to Bree, who was busy talking to Kelly, and raised an eyebrow. Everett frowned. Then he realized that Drew must know who Bree was. Drew was a detective with the local police agency. He had probably seen Bree at the police station when she was turning in criminals. Cluing in, Everett nodded. The two men shared an understanding look of determination before going back to their meals. "Bethany, when were you going to tell us?" Paget grabbed Bethany's hand. Bethany blushed. "It's Michael and Anne's day. I thought it could wait." Paget exclaimed over the small ring on Bethany's hand. "They've been engaged almost since they met," Molson said dryly. "He just didn't give her a ring till now. My brother has a thing about debt." "We waited until I could purchase it outright. I don't like owing anyone anything," shrugged Drew. "It's beautiful. The detail is lovely," noted Paget. "I'm so happy for both of you." "Thank you," smiled Bethany. The group descended into talking about weddings, which Everett automatically tuned out. Bree leaned toward him. "We could be checking out the office instead of listening to the merits of what gown shops to go to first." "No," responded Everett. He was starting to like her attitude. A woman who didn't get all mushy over the thought of weddings and kept to the business at hand. He wondered how the coming week would play out. If you enjoyed this chapter of In Pursuit of a Billionaire, Book 8 of the Ramsley Brothers series, look for Chapter 4. Remember, you can go to Amazon and get the paperback, ebook, Kindle Unlimited version, or Audible books of the Ramsley Brothers series. Happy listening!